I'd like to talk about the idea of cultural literacy. The conceptual term cultural literacy is very important for our education system at the very basic level, from K to grade 12, as well as at higher and continuing education level. What is cultural literacy? Actually, this is not unknown term. It is very known to public as well as to students. Original term is more of literacy, which is about writing and reading. And at one point, this term has become important when E.D. Hirsch, one of the professor from Virginia University in 60s, talked about cultural literacy. He thought a literate person should be able to engage in the culture. So it's more of a functional literacy. So it is more than basic literacy. So fluency in terms of reading, writing, talking, meaning making, all these requires the idea of cultural literacy that must come into play. We can perhaps make it more clear about how cultural literacy is seen by a teacher in a classroom or by a parent or by a student. So here you can see a number of images that talks about art, language, behavior, food, clothing, celebrations. These are on the top of the agenda. And then the value inside the mind, the values, the emotional aspect of social status, customs, roles they play, thought patterns in a society, beliefs, traditions, perceptions, even biases. These are part of description of cultural literacy that we should be aware of, a classroom teacher should be aware of. But of course, cultural literacy is sometimes seen from a different perspective. Let us play an audio
He's particularly critical of the way
about
reading is taught in
E.D.
elementary
Hirsch's
schools. Too much stress
talk
on skills
with
and not enough on
the
content. Hirsch wants young children to read culturally rich stories. Grant and Lee at Appomattox, for example, instead of culturally neutered paragraphs like, "What is friendship?" But not everyone agrees with Hirsch. His critics say his views are elitist. They ask, what information constitutes cultural literacy? And perhaps more importantly, who decides?
Whose culture?
We have with us to share his views on education and cultural literacy the author of the book, Professor E.D. Hirsch from the University of Virginia.
Matiul.
What is the difference, first of all, between cultural literacy and plain old literacy, which is being so much stressed these days?
Well, plain old literacy is the ability to decode the words on the page. And you can have that kind of plain old literacy without being able to read a newspaper or a serious book or article. Cultural literacy is a part of what I would call real literacy or true literacy, mature literacy. That is the ability to understand serious materials, that you need to be a citizen or even to rise in the economy.
E.D. Hirsch speaking.
Is it your belief that all high school graduates in this country used to be culturally literate?
Well, certainly we know that they used to be more culturally literate than they are now because we have solid evidence from the National Assessment of Educational Progress that fewer students now can read at an advanced level than could 15 years ago. We know that the scores on the verbal portion of the scholastic aptitude test have gone down in the last 15 years. It's clear that national literacy is declining, and not just among the lower class students, but also middle class students, and among those, the very brightest.
Who need?
So, as you can see, the declining aspect of basic literacy in the society. But I think if you look at the social media, use of social media, like the cell phone I was using and to learn something or information, these are part of cultural literacy. The camera we use to take pictures and put on Facebook or YouTube or video we make, all these are also part of cultural literacy. The First Nation youths often victimized due to lack of their knowledge of the law and regulations, and majority of them are subject to judici, a victim of punishments. And as you can see, the dropout rate among the students. If you think about the First Nation students in North America, in Canada and USA, in some schools I have seen that before they reach grade 12, about 80% of them drops out. Cultural literacy and many other factors could be important reasons for their failures in the school system. So cultural literacy is very important aspect that we need to teach in our education system. But of course we have to be aware of whose culture we are trying to promote. Michael Apple, a powerful advocate for those who have less access to power, do not have much of contribution in designing the curriculum, the course materials, and education system, and policy making. So when we talk about cultural literacy, we must also think about whether it is inclusive. We're trying to differentiate our education system, training and teaching in a way that we reach out everyone to reduce the dropout rate of the First Nations or other minorities or disabled people. So I think it is critical for us to be aware of, as teachers in North America, about the basic aspect of cultural knowledge. And of course, we must be aware of critical social issues. This is one of the old book. Nobody wants to read them, so I got them almost for nothing, very low price. But these are the important resources we need to bring up to inform educators, teachers. So I designed a course at Western Washington University long time ago, intercultural competencies for teachers. And this is, I think, one of the area we can focus. Thank you.